Have you ever looked at a stick of butter and thought, wonder if I could draw with that? Well, you could try it, or you could just pick up a box of Sennelier Oil Pastels. One of these is less likely to go rancid in your art portfolio. Hi folks, I'm Chris, and if you're new here, welcome to the Smushiness. Now, I've been using oil pastels for a long time, almost half a century. My grandfather was an artist, and he started teaching me to paint and draw as soon as I was capable of sitting up and grasping a paintbrush on my own. He had some Sakura crayons that he kept on hand for underdrawing, and he would sit me at his drafting table in his garret office at work and ask me to draw things for him, and he said I was helping. And he gave me pointers for how to work with various different media. He was pretty particular about me using the real thing to learn from. There were no wax Crayola crayons or kitty paints in that studio. So when I decided recently to pick up some Sennelier Oil Pastels, I was pretty sure I knew what they were going to be like. A little softer than I was used to because I usually stick with the mid-range, the mid-grade, but generally pretty much the same. I am going to spend the rest of this video showing you how wrong I was. So this is what Sennelier calls an introductory box. It's a small selection of basic colors. I'm also by coincidence using them on cream-colored Sennelier pastel paper. Oil pastels, if you're not familiar with them, are basically oil paints that have been turned into drawing sticks. They're pigment plus a binder of solidified oil plus sometimes a little bit of wax to help it keep its shape. They have varying hardness based on quality and brand, with a better quality usually meaning a softer medium. Now, oil-based crayons started with Sakura about 100 years ago with those crayons that I mentioned earlier. But the type that we're looking at today were created by Henri Sennelier in the 1940s, more or less just so that Picasso could travel more easily with his painting medium. Of course, they caught on with other artists as well, and by the 60s there were artists making their name with that as their primary medium. Sennelier uses primarily a single pigment for each color, so they are as vibrant and, as you can see in my swatching, just as suitable for use on a dark background as light. I expected these to have roughly the same brightness as other pastels, but these are somehow brighter. Maybe they use a higher ratio of pigment to binder than other brands. I just really love how bright these colors are. I have the same colors in other brands, but there's kind of a clarity to these that the other ones lack. They blend easily and layer effortlessly, both light over dark and dark over light. You can also use solvents to blend them, but I won't be demonstrating that here because the fumes would be dangerous for my parrot. But you can use the same solvents that you would use with oil paints. Just don't try to use them for fine detail. Already here in the few seconds that I'm holding them to swatch, they're starting to melt, and the softer they get, the bigger the stroke. For surface, I would stick with something with a tooth. They're great on canvas. If you try to use these on something smooth like Bristol board, there's nothing for the first layer of color to grab onto, and you'll have trouble laying it down. And if it's too smooth, the oil will flake off when the paper flexes or as it gets old and dries a little. In terms of consistency, I was pretty happy with these pastels. They were smooth throughout. There were no dry or blotchy bits or streaky spots where the pigment wasn't fully mixed in, which can be a problem with some brands. What they are, though, is messy. This is where I was the most wrong in my expectations. You can see as I progress through this drawing, they break with even slight pressure, and the heat from your hand is enough to make that melt. The lower grade pastels that I usually use do soften a little, but this is almost a liquid. By the end of this one picture, you can see that they're broken all to heck, and it used 2/3 of both the black and the ochre. By that last corner, I wasn't even really drawing with the ochre anymore, just pushing the semi-liquid oil around with my fingers. Imagine if I'd been trying to do something with real detail or on a larger canvas. By the end of the piece, it looked like I'd been painting my hands instead of the paper. If you use these, you're basically finger painting once they warm up. Now, they don't really have any smell when they're normal temperature, but as soon as they heat up, the binder does have a vaguely chemical, kind of waxy smell. It doesn't stink, but it does have a definite odor. As best I can tell, these don't present any safety hazard, at least not this collection. All of these have a California Prop 65 warning, but that's become so broad as to be meaningless in practice. The binder is not toxic. Some of the other colors may have cadmium or cobalt in the pigment, however. I know they did at one point, but I am not sure about now. Now, some of their other collections do have an Art and Creative Materials Institute caution label, so you'll want to watch out for how you handle those. Casual use should be fine, but Definitely don't lick the paint. With a couple exceptions, Sennelier pastels are all extremely light fast. The exceptions are among the fluorescent colors, so everything that I have here is fine. And one very important consideration with these boxed sets is what happens when you finish off one color. Like this black is almost gone. You don't want to buy a whole new box, you just want to replace that color. Sennelier sells all their colors individually. That's actually how I first found them. Our local Dick Blick had a big display of them. It's hard not to get one of each color, right? Individually, they're about $3.50, $4 at Blick, so a little bit of a splurge, but cheap enough to put that birthday card money on. So what's my final verdict? I really love the Sennelier Oil Pastels, but I don't think that I'll be doing any more pictures with just those. It's both more cost effective and easier to control if you start with a student grade, slightly harder pastel to fill out the lower layers and to get your colors right, and then save the smoother, creamier, softer, higher professional grade pastel for texture and vibrance at the top. I will leave a link to the Sennelier Oil Pastel page at Blick in case you want to try these out for yourself. That said, if you've got an art supply store nearby that has an open display of these, I do recommend that you go and try them out before you put your money on them. The creaminess is definitely a selling point, but if you have sensory issues or you just don't like to get messy, these may not be the oil pastels for you. You may prefer to stay with a lower grade, which means a slightly harder pastel, because it will be less sticky on your hands. Overall, I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 sunflower seeds, with that one knocked off just because of the messiness and how fast I went through them. Don't forget to tell us in the comments what you're going to draw with oil pastels, and if you enjoyed this video, if you could like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. And if you found this review useful, my Patreon and Discord links are down in the description. Massive thank you to my patrons, without whose support, both moral and financial, I could not make videos. And now I'm gonna go wash my hand. Yeah, bye.